he had to come down himself. So that's what we talked about. Today, what we want to talk about is, what was that problem that necessitated that he come down himself? And what I'm going to do is to use the book of Ecclesiastes again to explore that. And I'm trying to do two things. I'm trying to answer the questions, but I'm trying to give you some excitement about the book of Ecclesiastes. So you kind of want to go and read it again. But I'm also doing, in sending you to the book of Ecclesiastes, I'm also trying to warn you that the book of Ecclesiastes, as in the wisdom books, be careful how you interpret them. Because not everything they say, they mean you to take and apply to your life as if it is positive. Okay, so let's, which I normally say to people in terms of proverbs and things like that, that the proverb is not a precept. The proverb is not a precept. What I mean is that the proverb is not a teaching itself. You have to unpeel some layers on it. Because sometimes if you are not careful, you think that it contradicts itself. Look at Proverbs, it talks about when a fool does something, ignore the fool. Don't respond to the fool in his own manner. And then at the same time, he talks about when a fool does something, respond to the fool in his own manner. So it kind of like, it's like, exactly. So it's kind of like it's contradicting itself. But it is a proverb. It is a proverb. And you have to understand the proverbs of their time and apply it. So I'm not talking about, so I guess what I'm saying to you is this. In taking an excursion through the book of Ecclesiastes, I'll be trying to give you a way in which you can see Ecclesiastes and interpret it correctly. And so let me start by saying a word of prayer, and then we can move on. Father, we are seeking to explore, by your help and your active agency, what it means for you to come down in your Son, and why the need for you to come down. And I pray that, Lord, you would open our minds and our hearts to you, that would understand and receive your word, and stir something in our spirit by your Spirit that we will desire to obey, and give us the ability to obey as we walk with you in the truths that you are just about to unpack for us. Father, I pray that you remove me as a person, that I would not behave or be seen as the source, but only a channel. And as John said, that Christ might be exalted and increased, that I might decrease in this endeavor. We pray these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay. So let me just introduce the book. It's just, it starts with verse 1. It says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king of Jerusalem. The words of the preacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem. And if you know anything about the Old Testament are named by the first, by the first verse. The names of the Old Testament are often, in the Hebrew, are picked up by the first verse. That gives it its title. The English doesn't follow it so much, although it does. So, for example, in the book of Genesis, it's in the beginning. That's why it is called Genesis, the book of beginnings, and so on and so forth. Something similar exists in the book of Ecclesiastes. It says, the words of the preacher. I don't know why the King James puts it as preacher. It could be preacher. But it is, the Hebrew is somebody who calls out people to a meeting place, mainly for the purpose of learning. So he calls out people. And that's why, the word Ecclesiastes is a Greek form of the Hebrew word. It's a Greek form. That's why you call it Ecclesiastes. Ecclesia means the called out ones. Anytime you are using the word ecclesia, you are calling out people, okay? And so whoever it is who wrote this, he calls himself, I think the Hebrew word is Kohelet, but it's the one who calls out people into an assembly for the purpose of learning. So he could be a preacher. I prefer to see him as a teacher. So I would normally call him a teacher. But there's a lesson out there. We are also similarly called to call out people from the world into the place of learning at the feet of Jesus Christ. And I ask, how many times do we do that? We do that in two ways. One is pure evangelism. Okay? We go out and say to the people of the world, joy to the world, the Lord is come. Then number two is we reach out to our fellow Christians. And as we learned from Hebrews, so that even when things are tough, they will not neglect the assembly of the people of God. Okay, the ecclesia of the people of God. So we come. So that's the start. And that begs the question. This book was written about 3,000 years ago, by the way. And the things it's saying here, it is really relevant to our days. Really, really relevant. And that for me means that the Bible, no matter how long it's been written, it is relevant to our days. Who wrote this book? He didn't write his name, but he leaves us some clues over there. And so I'll take us through some of the clues. He says the preacher or the teacher, so he's a teacher. The son of David. And so he must have been the son of King David. I say the king of Jerusalem. So David had many sons. A few of them became kings. But the king of Jerusalem. And because of that, many people think that it is Solomon who wrote that. And we know that that person is very wealthy. If you go to, I think, chapter 2, verse 6 to verse 8, I believe, or probably, yes. No. Let's take verse 4 onwards to verse 8. I'm trying to see who. He says, the person is describing himself. I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possession of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and special treasures of kings and of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. This is a person who was fantastically wealthy. And I'll make a point. I mean, none of us here is as wealthy as him, by the way. I mean, I think in the history of the world, we are told that there are possibly two people whose wealth has never been surpassed. Those of you who do any African history, there's a guy called Mansa Musa, the suzerain of old Malian Empire. They had gold like nobody's business, and he carried gold and distributed it like nobody's business. But also Solomon. These are supposed to be the two people that there is historical evidence that they had wealth that nobody now has any of that sort. Okay. And I'm saying to myself, if they had wealth, God give Ghana a little bit of that, huh? And then we'll be okay. So he describes himself. And because of that, we know that it is Solomon. Because no other person fits that description than we have. We know from other parts of Scripture that Solomon is the only one who has been described in that matter. And what he sought to answer a particular question. How do we get fulfillment or satisfaction here on this earth? That's the question he was seeking to answer. And that's the problem why Jesus came. Because, you see, we could do whatever. Life is not fulfilling. Life is not satisfactory outside of Christ. And that was his main message. Look, his message was primarily, under the sun, there are a lot of things you can do. It gets you nowhere. But if you find your true purpose, which is fear God and obey God's commandment, then you've cracked the puzzle. So as we think about Christmas, by all means, eat food. By all means, enjoy. But if you do all of these things outside Christ, it is meaningless. So you see that he uses the phrase under the sun a lot of the times. Go into the book. I think he would have used it about 29 times or thereabout. And then he also uses the phrase vanity or meaningless. My count in terms of the actual word used in the Hebrew tells me he uses it about 38 times. And this is just a book of 12 chapters. So it means that under the sun and then meaningless are key themes that he picks up. Okay. So as I did last week, I'll give you a general overview, make some points there, and I'll come and pick just a small part of it and open up for you. And I'll leave the rest for you to go and read. Okay. When we finish church today, anybody that I meet, I would ask you, how was Hebrews for you? Okay, you're fortunate that next week I won't be here to ask you how was Ecclesiastes for you, but I have your WhatsApp numbers. I would ask anyway. Okay, so let's move on. The book for me is divided into different portions, but I would not go strictly by its divisions. I'll talk about, if you like, the path to fulfillment. The path to fulfillment. As human beings see it. And I'll talk about the persons who should seek the right path for fulfillment. So I'll shift on to persons from the path. And then the third thing, which is where I'll end, will be the purpose of God in your life. So path, persons, purpose, if you like. Think about it that way. And just to conclude my introduction, it's really, if you understand his purpose, you think he lands here, power and wealth can make you happy, then he says it doesn't make you happy. You think you land here, it says women can make you happy, then he says it won't make you happy. Wisdom and knowledge can make you happy. I say, I have it. He says it won't make you happy. What does this man want at all? He wants round and round and round. And if you think of our lives, two things. One is the running of time. One is the running of time. He says that time will keep running with or without you. The seasons will go on and on with or without you. But I thought I am worth something. It's just saying that you go on. And he says, the funny thing is that death will come, which is the second thing. Death will come whether you are wise or unwise. Death will come whether you are rich or poor. And then he loops death back into time. He says, when you die, nobody remembers you. If I ask any of you right now, your own family member, what's the name of your great-grandfather? What does he look like? Where did he live? You wouldn't know. And I was trying to do my family history. I learned a very salutary remark, So I go around and I wanted to know, where am I coming from? And I said to my friends from the north that you people, you don't understand anything at all. You are just giddy like that, only for me to realize that my father's grandmother was brought as a slave from the north to Accra. You got what I mean? Oh, there's some part of it. You get what I mean? I can go probably about 6 generations back, and that's all I end. Yet those people, those who lived beyond the 6th generation in my time, saw themselves as significant. Who remembers them? And I'll come back to land at a place that if men do not remember, God remembers. And that is why it is God that we must move close to. There's a chat some time back. I mean, I can't remember what occasioned that conversation, but I was having a conversation with Pastor Fred, and we concluded that of all the things you do, it's only what you do for God that has any eternal significance. And it's because God remembers them. God puts it into his account and rewards you for that. So death and time, he says, makes all things meaningless. So now let's go to the scriptures. Let me read a few things from chapter 1, and I'll explain a few things, and I'll come to the past. Chapter 1. It says, verse 2, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all his labor, for which he toils under the sun? So you see the vanity and the under the sun coming in. One generation passes away, and another generation comes. Okay? But the earth abides forever. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes towards the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place which the rivers come, there they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come for those who will come after. I read this thing and I say, the world goes round and round. It is not. And then the one that tested my mind so much was when he says there's nothing new. And I remember saying to myself that, but this is new. And the word that came to me was that, which of this material is new that went into making it? The chips, which went into making it, made of silicon. Silicon and sand. What's new? The ideas and things like that. And then when you go back into time, you read about the works of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and things like that. The planes that we think we have, they had already designed things like that. Nothing new. Nothing new. Now let me say a few words about what he called vanity or meaningless. The actual word means smoke or vapor. Okay. So use it as a metaphor. I prefer to use it as both as a metaphor and real thing. So try and hold smoke in your hands. I mean, the thing appears real. You try to hold it, it doesn't hold. And that's why, you see, when he talked about the Hebrew phrase is a chasing of the wind. He said all his vanity is chasing of the wind. He plays it on words. He says all is like vapor, chasing after the wind. I mean, because the wind carries vapor along, and you are trying to run in there. When he talks about it, he talks about two things in my view. He talks about a thing that, I mean, the vapor and smoke or breath are short-lived. They come, it's gone. That's one. Number two is that there are things we don't really understand well. For me, I mean, the word I'll use is a puzzle or an enigma or a paradox, whatever you take it as. And he says life is like that. It is, I mean, the things that we are pursuing. You think you got it, and then it seems to be no longer there. It seems you've got it, And it reminds me of one of the management theorists. It was called Abraham Maslow. Most of you who have studied some management will have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you start from I'm hungry. I need to be fed, your physiological needs. Then once you get the food, I don't only need to be fed today. I need to be fed for a period of time. You come your security needs. Now you are sure that the food is coming. But I'm a human being. I must relate to others. Then you come to your social needs. When you get into your social needs, it's I must be seen as somebody. So you come to your esteem needs. And once you are seen as somebody, then you kind of ask, but God created me for a purpose, or I'm on this earth for a purpose. So what is it that I should do to fulfill that purpose? Then you come to your self-actualization needs. And work that I and some other people have tried to do in extension of Maslow, we talk about a sixth one, where you are not thinking about yourself, but you are seeing yourself as a gift to the world. But what Maslow says, which is what chimes in with this, is that the individual is an insatiable animal. That no matter what you do, they will only be satisfied for a little while. And that's it. And I'm saying that this is exactly what Solomon was talking about. That the paths we pursue to happiness won't get us there. You think you have it small, and then that's it. In fact, we have a Ghana song. Inani na no no naleko, inani na no no naleko, inani na no no naleko, hule mada minyumo shida. And what it just means is that I wish I had what you have. If I had that, I would thank my God. You lie. That's not true. You see, because if you have what I have, you get what I have, a 2x4 something, you then want more than that, more than that, more than that. So let me talk about 4 parts that he talked about, and we'll today focus on just one. The first part he talked about is the pursuit of wisdom. Okay. And he landed on them in chapter 1, verse 12 to verse 18, and chapter 2, verse 12 to verse 17. He talked about, look, he said, I pursued wisdom, I pursued wisdom, I pursued wisdom. You know, and the philosophers of this earth, we revere them, and so on. But does that satisfy? And I'm not saying don't go to school. I'm saying go to school within the context. But I can also say to you that if you go to school and it's without Christ, it's meaningless in the long run. Because that's not, if you are going to go to school because you want satisfaction from that. Go ask those who read PhDs. You do only a small part of something. And all you are going to do is publish academic papers from there. That's all. You can publish the academic papers, they will give you the title of a professor. So what? Even your own family don't recognize that this thing. You come to my house at the moment, and some friends visit, and they said, oh, Prof, then my sons will say, you mean Dad? For me, that's not professor. For them, it's Dad. It doesn't matter. So he talked, and we'll come to talk about, that's what we'll dwell on today. The second one he talked about is pleasure. Eat and drink, chase after women, etc. Chapter 2, verse 1 to 11. And then the third thing he talked about, I'm talking about 4 parts he gave. The third thing he talked about is work, your labor. You get it from chapter 2, verse 18 to chapter 3, verse 22. You work hard. And things like, and look, I work hard. And for me, there's some joy in working, although, you see, if the joy was permanent, then I got one, I kept on working hard like that. Working hard has become like an addiction to me. And when people ask me, I use a comment by Shakespeare. Those of you who read Macbeth, or if you read Macbeth, he uses it, he speaks about it in ancient English. He says, the labor in which one delights physics itself. Physics is, in that case, is heals itself. That's where we get physician from. Okay. And he says, the work that you love, even if you get tired, that work itself is healing, is cathartic to you. That's what it says. And so I work hard. Ask me whether hard work gives me my satisfaction. It doesn't. And then the final thing he says is wealth and power. Wealth and power. As for that one, we know that already. Power, even if you are the most powerful man, life president, the meaning is in the word, life president. When you die, you are no longer life president. Look at the happenings in this world. Syria, for 50 years, father and son had ruled. What they said of things, when the moment came, they had to run away in the night. And they're in Moscow seeking political asylum there. Somebody is going to tell them whether you get asylum or not. Somebody is going to restrict their movement around the place. If you come to the history of Ghana, our own Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Sajifo, or as some people say, Ofosoji, he had power itself. It is said that 1 o'clock, each day, 1 o'clock, there are announcements of those who are going to go into detention. If you're a senior civil servant, you sit by the radio. Or if you want to sit by the radio, go to Togo, Lome, and sit by the radio there, because if they are going to arrest you, you're already out of the place. He was overthrown. He was overthrown. And he had to seek asylum. In fact, he had gone as president of Ghana. He was going to solve peace issues in Vietnam. And he decided to pass through China to do that. From Ghana, by the time the presidential plane reached China, and they met him, they told him, Mr. President, you are no longer the president. And the people who were saluting him and things like that, they started running away. In fact, I'm not making it up. Read Nkrumah's own book, Dark Days in Ghana. He wasn't charitable at all to people. He described one person who I admire very much, who I had met in life. He says the guy developed diarrhea immediately. He had power. Look at our own Ghana. The events of the past few days. People who had huge amount of power. Now they are thinking, what's going to happen to them? Some people say, we are moving to the dentist era. So we're going to do oral hygiene, operation recover all loot. And then those who have been asked to recover the loot, they are being asked whether they themselves have loot that needs to be recovered from them. You see, power and wealth, they pass by. I know some people who are fighting over property. And then I ask the person whose property you are fighting over, he's even dead and gone. So why are you fighting over the person's property? By the way, that's not to say that if you die, you cannot leave your will to me. But I won't fight over. You get what I mean? So those are the 4 things he says we pursue this thing. Number 1 is wisdom. We think if we are wise, everything is sorted. Number 2, he says we seek pleasure. If we have enough pleasure, everything will be okay. Number 3 is work. And number 4 is wealth and power. But it doesn't bring us that. So let let me go into just one of them, wisdom, and explain a few things about it, and then I'll go to the second one. When should you be pursuing these things, and then what's the purpose after all? So let me start from chapter 1, verse 12. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven. The burdensome task God has given to the sons of man by which they may be exercised. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity, a grasping for the wind. Put it this way, that phrase, read it. All is like a vapor, a grasping after the wind. You cannot grasp the wind. That is all it's saying. It's meaningless, it's vanity. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered. I communed with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness, and have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge, and I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is the grasping for the wind. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. Next time I'm coming, I'll bring anybody who wants a fridge magnet. It's I call it the unofficial motto of Oxford University. Our official motto is "The Lord is my light and my salvation." Okay, but our unofficial motto is this: it says, "Why study? The more you study, the more you know. The more you know, the more you know that there are other things that you don't know. The more you know that there are other things that you don't know, the more you realize that you don't know anything of the things to be known. So why study?" I'm talking about a university. So we are going around in rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds like that. And that is why this it's a burdensome thing. Me, myself, my life is like that. I started work as an accountant. I thought if you're an accountant, and no people who didn't understand accounting were playing stupid. How wrong was I? I loved my accounting work until I was moved from accounting into what we will now call strategy, but back then we called corporate planning. To head corporate planning in BP. Then I saw that my accounting didn't know anything or say anything meaningful about corporate planning. My accounting didn't do that at all. So what I thought I knew, was nothing at all and meaningless. So I pursued, I was a chartered accountant at that time. And those days, I knew people who had written chartered accountancy examinations. It took them a long time to pass. In fact, I know an old man whose niece was going to study chartered accountancy. He called and said, "Do something better with your life." And a young lady asked, "Oh, but I thought accounting is something better." He says, he started mentioning. His father started chartered accountancy qualification. 20 years is not passed. 25 years, and the young lady was discouraged. In fact, when I was going to, when I had qualified as a chartered accountant, a friend's wife called me and said, "Oh, now you finished university. You have to do the chartered accountancy qualification. But know that it's going to be difficult. You're going to fail a number of times. But stay at it. My husband, look, see where he is now. He failed many times, but he eventually passed. He started writing from 1976, and he just qualified in 1987 or thereabout. You know the person I'm talking about. He worked at Valco. I know the guy was very good, though. And then, meanwhile, the guy was sitting down there. And let's assume the wife is called Amma. And she says, Amma, you two talk plenty. No one has already passed his chartered accountancy qualification. So. But you see, all that chartered accountancy qualification, I said, when in the same organization, I was moved to corporate planning, it was nothing. And by the way, my people have told me it was nothing already. I mean, at BP, when you print your accounting report for them, if you are lucky, then you see them using it to wedge their table, which was shaky. Or, in those days, we didn't sell granules in polythene bags. We sell it with paper. You go and buy granules, you see BP, financial reports that I had spent all my time. I feel useless. I can home cut here. What more vanity is there in terms of that? So I said to myself, I'm talking about wisdom. I said to myself, this a thing that we need to crack. How can accounting support corporate planning? So I said, I'm going to do a master's degree. I finished the master's degree. I got a distinction. I hadn't answered the question. So I'm going to do a PhD. My PhD was called The Role of Accounting in Strategic Decision Processes. That's my first PhD. I finished. I hadn't answered the question properly. That's chasing after wisdom. Then I said, okay, let me go and teach and research. So I went to Manchester Business School as a lecturer. I taught, wrote research, still there. Up to today, among the many things I'm doing, I'm still trying to see how does accounting and strategy fit together. But along the line, I realized that if I'm going to chase this thing, I won't make any money. So now I say I'm a strategy consultant. You get what I mean? You chase wisdom like that. Wisdom will chase you with poverty and tattered. Have you seen any of the Greek philosophers or any notable philosopher who looks good? The only people who compete with them are the psychiatrists. But I'm saying that we spend time pursuing knowledge and knowledge and knowledge and knowledge and knowledge. Where would it end? It's an endless cycle. It's an endless cycle. It's an endless cycle. It's an endless cycle. Look, you and the madman, there's really no difference. That's why he says that he sought to understand wisdom and madness and folly. There was one day, and by the way, in the UK, if somebody close to you suspects that you are mad, he would ask for them to take you to the psychiatric ward. A Christian friend of mine has been done that before. His wife, who wasn't a Christian, woke up and saw him praying in tongues. They caught him, put it, Nine Wells Hospital, Dundee, psychiatric place. I heard about it, then I went to explain to the people that this is what speaking in tongues were. And I told Carl, don't go and speak in tongues in front of your wife. Next time you go there, I'm not going to be around. You see, look, all I'm saying is that by all means, study. By all means, learn. But if you think that you are going to get your satisfaction there, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. Nothing. I mean, where is the end to that learning? And I can tell you that. Where is the end? I mean, I spend almost all my time learning. And I'm saying these things because, you see, there's something better that you can learn. The scriptures. There's something better. That's why, God says to Joshua, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but you will meditate upon it day and night, And be careful to do everything that is written in it. And then you have what? Not only success, but good success. Success that is grounded, success that is lasting. So, if you like, pursue wisdom without God. Let me go on. Uh, I have not packed my things, so I have to run through this thing quickly. Chapter 2, again, is talking about wisdom. I say a few words about wisdom and folly over there. Chapter 2, verse 12 to 17. Let me say a few words about wisdom over there. He says, "Then I turned myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who succeeds the king? Only what he has already done. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly, as light excels darkness. And I say, yes, it's better to be wise than foolish. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness." And I say, you're talking truth now. Then he says, yet, anytime you see yet or but, then we're in trouble. Yet I myself perceived that the same event happens to them all. So why should I be wise? And the fool sits there listening. You saw the madman who says, we are the ones who are going about struggling and being tired. That is. Now, that's not to argue that you shouldn't be wise. But I'm saying that you come, if that is what you are building your house upon, then you come to the same end. There's no difference between you and the foolish person. Indeed, when you get to some extent, you come. Look, how many of you know about Archimedes' principle in physics? Okay. Now, Archimedes had been asked to do a particular calculation, in terms of what the weight of the king's and the dimensions of some piece of gold for the king. And the king wanted to see whether it was pure gold or not. Now, if the thing had a regular shape, no problem. Archimedes would have calculated that. But I didn't. So Archimedes was thinking and struggling with this idea. And then he went to lie in his bath. Then he saw that the bath was full. And then once he lay in the bath, he displaced an amount of water from there. So water started. Then it occurred to him that, if I want to know the volume of the thing, just put it in a bath full of water and see how much it will displace. And if I know the properties of pure gold, I can work the rest. As soon as he saw that, he went out from the bath naked, running through the whole town. Eureka, eureka, eureka. I've got it, I've got it, I've got it. If you see Archimedes running, if you see me running from Death Trackle areas, Pastor Fred, I've got it, naked. What would you think about me? You get what I mean? What would you think about me? You see, and sometimes you walk past and say, oh, so please, I'm saying that be careful. Solomon says that the same thing happens to them. So I said in my heart, verse 15, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity, or a vapor, if you like. For there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever. Since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does the wise man die? As the fool dies. I'm being careful what I'm saying to you. I'm saying it's good to be wise. But I'm saying if wisdom is what will give you your ultimate satisfaction, then forget it. It won't give you your ultimate satisfaction. Let me just say a couple of things about pleasure, and then I'll leave it to you to look at the one on work and wealth and power. So chapter 2, the same chapter 2, in terms of pleasure, I read from verse 1 to verse 11. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth. Mirth is happiness. Therefore, enjoy pleasure. But surely this also was vanity. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven or under the sun all the days of my life. Then he says, I made great works. I built myself houses. I planted vineyards, and so on. Now, if anybody can chill more than Solomon, you lie. His wives, plenty. His concubines, plenty. He had a whole harem of those things. If he says that with his wife and his concubines, he was going to visit one person a day, it's going to take him 2.5 years, continuous, doing that. Never mind the away sites that, like his father, he sees somebody bathing, he thinks she's my property. Listen, as for that one, that is genetic. In fact, there was a guy who was a very senior man in Ghana who was, somebody complained to me that he was chasing young girls. So I should talk to him. I say, as for this one, yeah, I can't. So I'm going to call his brother, who was another prominent person, to talk to him. So when I called his brother, he said, oh, my elder brother, you think he's chasing women. Mine is even worse. So that's the genetic, this thing he placed that. You see, Solomon had, he says, look, the pleasure, wine. He had that. I mean, so for those of you who think recreational drugs and alcohol and things like that can satisfy, or it could, but you come back to yourself. On the way to coming back to reality, there's what is called the hangover. I thank God for his grace upon my life. When I wasn't a Christian, I went to smoke weed with most of my friends. None of them turned out any good. In fact, most of them are dead now. They're my age mates. I was told that if you smoked it, you become high. And I tried and tried. It didn't send me any higher than I already was before I smoked. the thing. So I then decided that but assuming, and this is serious, assuming that when I took it, I went high, I would have been hooked on it. I wouldn't have been standing here, maybe by the grace of God. I wouldn't have been standing here talking about this. So if you think that in enjoying, so all your life, I want to do this in order to be able to enjoy. Food, how much would you eat? Food, how much would you eat? Yesterday, I went to a certain program. I was being honored in a particular way, so I had to behave like a gentleman, you see. So when part of it is when you get there, don't eat a lot of food. Before I left home, I made sure that, I like Gary proper. And somebody had dropped okra stew with all the works. The one that you call Noah's Ark. The animals are there 2 by 2, kind of. This thing. I dropped it. So I ate the thing proper. But I made sure that I ate it in mid-morning. 2 reasons for that. One is that if it will worry my stomach, then it shouldn't worry my stomach at the event. But the second is that I can eat that one and sleep off it and wake up. So I ate and slept. When I went there, they said, "Oh, can we serve you this?" I said, "Oh, just give me something small, you know." I had eaten. If you follow me, and you to say something small, midnight, you see. You know. But food, which is for some people is the enjoyment. How much are you going to eat? That's first. Number two, drinks. Assuming that, how much are you going to drink? I mean, those who say you can drink, don't get drunk. Okay, go ahead. But how much would you be able to drink without stepping into drunkenness? And if you drink, what's going to happen? Look, I had a guy who taught me what then we call additional mathematics in this thing, in the old system. That I'm sure you would know him. We used to call him Prof. And the guy was always drunk. Always drunk. In fact, one occasion, I think Star Ali was holding a party and we were invited there. It was 1980 or thereabout. And Prof, I don't know how it can be followed, as he took the floor dancing. It was very embarrassing, but Prof was drunk. He was always perpetually drunk. He never went to university. Although he would write A-levels and get A, and he didn't do anything with it. And he go and write again. Until sometime when I was working at BP. And he came there drunk. Drunk, you know. And the people said they wouldn't allow him in. And I was just getting out. Then I saw him. I said, "Prof, what are you doing?" So we talked to him. That day, I called his brother, who was an elder at Church of Pentecost. I said, "You got to deliver the guy." To the grace of God, he's a retired CFO now. But drinking, he'll drink. I remember we went somewhere. And I followed him to a bar. He got drunk, two drunk people having an argument. Prof says that he has a talent for mathematics, and indeed he has a talent for mathematics. I haven't seen anybody like him in my life who can teach maths. You know, he taught me maths at the O levels. I went to A levels. Actually, they were teaching the A level maths. I said, "When would we get to the A level bit?" Because he had taught me at the O levels what they were doing at the A. So he talked to the guy. He said, "Everybody, listen to him. We'll call him Prof. Ankobia is his last name." Prof says, "God has given everybody talent. You are drunk. How do you know God has given everybody talent?" And then he said to, the guy said, "Yes, I agree." So the other drunk man asked Prof, "What's your talent?" He said, "Ask for him, maths." Then Prof asked him, "What's your talent?" The guy says, "He is to impregnate women." And then Prof said, what a foolish talent. That became a fight. And you should see two drunk men who couldn't stand attempting to throw blows at each other. You know, it was so disgraceful. He could do something for you. In Ghana, we say, this in that echale photo. You know. You see, and I've seen many, many drunk people who are drunk, what he has done for them. There are other forms of entertainment. Look, everything in moderation. Everything in moderation. There are some things you better not start. Recreational drugs, don't. I'm an example of the extreme work of the grace of God over here. But I could show you mates of mine. There's a mate of mine. Anytime I come to Ghana, I'm going to do a public lecture. If he's starting at 8 o'clock, he'll get there at 6 o'clock in the morning. He's waiting for me. We call him Nikloti. When you call him Nikloti, and he responds, La Beshito. La is fire. Okay, and fire burns. But also pepper burns. And his response is that although fire burns, it doesn't need pepper to make it burn. And he was making reference to smoking weed. When we were in secondary school, He was way bigger. He went to the army, he was sacked from the army. And the day he died, it was just like a skeleton. And you give Niklote money. Let's say he comes, I see him, I say, oh, Niklote, that's 500 Ghana. He said, oh, if I well, I'm 50. I could call 500, then you give him 50. And then he will tell you, he was trying to reform. He will tell you, call him 500 there. You know, look, please, enjoyment, yes, but in moderation. I beg you. Yesterday, I heard from a friend of mine who said that, in fact, it was his father who raised that issue. His father said this friend was always chasing girls. And then they had a Dutch exchange student come to visit the country. And this guy got involved with a Dutch exchange student. And every day, the Dutch exchange student was looking for him. And if you catch the drift, he went several rounds. And now, he was growing thinner. And then, so when the girl comes and knocks their house door, he changes his voice like his father's voice. And he says that, let's call him Kwame. I almost mentioned his proper name. He's a big-time lawyer now. Then he will say, Kwame is not around, but he changed his father's voice. You say you wanted to sleep with a woman multiple rounds. She'd offered herself not only multiple rounds, but multiple days consecutively. Go and do it. You see, it doesn't, this thing. And so that's what it says. And it says, I built houses, I built gardens, I built this, I built this, I built this, I built this. It doesn't help. So, who is he giving this warning to? Let me just move on from there. Who is he giving this warning to? Young people, listen to that. Chapter 11, verse 9. Chapter 11, verse 9. This is what it says. After saying everything is vanity, he comes and says, rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart. He's not talking about walking in the ways of God, and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these, God will bring you into judgment. Therefore, remove sorrow from your heart and put away evil from your flesh. For childhood and youth are vanity. One of the scariest parts of ever in my life was in a place called Islamabad in Pakistan. And there's that particular part of Pakistan, Islamabad is on a hilly place, by the way. But there's a mountaintop that they had good restaurants. And once I was going to that restaurant at night, we're in a car. And the young people will be racing down the mountain and would kill off their lights and race down the mountain. You know. So if you are not fortunate that your driver is not alert to see them, you crash. And they do it up and down. So I saw one of those young men, and I said to him, why do you do that? He said, the thrill of it. And as we conversed, it never occurred to him that young people die. And he felt I was worried about death because I was much older. Of course, I mean, they say that when dry bones are mentioned, old men and old women begin to shake themselves. So I know that all things being equal, I'm nearer my grave than most of you are. But young people also die. And therefore, do not leave the pursuit of God to when you are old. Number one, because you might not grow to become old. Number two, because you would have been established in your ways. So he says, listen to what he says again. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth. And many times I've seen people say, rejoice, young man, in your youth. What he was using is sarcasm. So don't go and quote this one and preach a sermon out of it in a positive this thing. He says, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart. So, that's, and I've heard people preach that. That is not what Solomon was saying. And he says that, and walk in the ways in the sight of your eyes. And he's saying that this is what we do, or you did as young, you do as young people. I rejoice in my youth. You know, those of you who are younger, when they started, they say life begins at 40. I say, look at old people. They say life begins at 40. Then I got to be 40. I said life hasn't begun. Life begins at 50. You were saying age. You come and join me. And then I moved after 50. And I said life begins at 60. And now I'm thinking I'm progressing to life begins at 85 or thereabout. You know, it comes like that. I mean, it wasn't long ago that I thought I was a virile, vibrant young person. I was giving advice left and right. I could jump, I could do stuff, and so on. You get what I mean? Youth is not forever. So how you use your youth is important. And he says, don't use your youth letting your heart cheer you in the days of your youth, or walking in the ways of your heart, or in the sight of your eyes. But there's something you can do. And I'll come to that. But the reason he's saying that is because he says, because beware, but know that for all these things, the enjoyment of youth, there comes a day, he says, God will bring you into judgment. And he says, therefore, because of that, remove sorrow from your heart and put away evil from your flesh. And the reason, and for childhood and youth are like breath. And the reason he's saying that is that the things, the youthful pleasures and things like that, many times they add sorrow to it. Many times they add sorrow to it. You know, I was reading a cartoon. I mean, artists are very humorous. A young man, a father came home and saw his wife beating his son like nobody's business. And he says, why are you beating our son? And then the wife said, I asked your son to study. Your son asked me, why should he study? And I said, if you study, you do well and get a good wife. And then the son said, but my dad studied. Look where he's ended up. You go, oh, what I mean. And whereas, I mean, of course, this boy is stupid. You stand in front of your mother, and your mother is saying that womanhood, beauty, inner beauty, etc., is the reward you get for studying, and you say that your father studied, he didn't get that. But I thought the young man was up to some point. You know, that all the things that we do, if we think it's going to give us something that lasts, we'll come to an end of that. So let me read you. So that is the kind of person. I've talked about the past 4 parts. Then I'm saying, youth, be careful. The period of time in which you should move away from the pursuit of these things without grounding it in God is during your youth onwards. And then let me talk about why we are here. And so I conclude with almost the very last verses of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, verse 13 and 14, and that will be the end. He says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. And that's that's my last but one point I want to make for you. Look, if you have money and you are using the money in the fear of God, there's something in it. There's more satisfaction. If you are eating food and it's in the fear of God, then that's also good. You know, I never noticed that I liked food so much that as soon as food is placed in in front of me, I start eating it. And recently I was having a conversation with one of my sons. I'm the only one who would dare say something like me. So we're talking about food and how it's good to enjoy your food. And he said to me, "Oh, yeah, I know you enjoy your food." And I thought that he was going to say that because it shows around my stomach and everything. So I said, give me proof of that. He said, by the time the plate lands on the table, you already have your cutlery digging into it. Then I said, yes, but everybody does that. And he says, but you pray before you start your day's work. You pray before. He pointed out to me everything that I pray about, apart from food. You know, and I dismissed him. I said, oh, nonsense, Chris. I mean, and then I went, and then I prepared some food. Well, I not prepared some food. That's a lie. I dished out some food, and immediately I started eating. Then I remember Chris's conversation. So with half the food in my mouth, I was starting to say the grace for myself. I'm making the point that even food, eat it to the glory of God. Your relationship, eat it to the glory of God. Wisdom, to the glory of God. And in wisdom, I remind you of a sermon that Pastor Fred preached some time ago, the fear of the Lord and wisdom. So do that. Everything you do, whatever you do, work in the fear of the Lord. Your marriage in the fear of the Lord. I mean, everything, every single thing, the fear of the Lord. Let me round it up and say that these are the words of someone who described himself as the son of David. He says he's the teacher, the son of David, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Jerusalem in Israel, and the wisest person who had lived until his time. And I add, the richest person. I say, Solomon, wow. But there is a son of David. Okay? There's a teacher of teachers. Okay? There's the wisdom of God himself. Okay? And he is calling you into something yourself. He owns all things. All power and authority belongs to him. And the things he says to us that will not bring us satisfaction unless we are in him. All those things he provides for us in heaven. And he's not only king of Israel and king of Jerusalem. He's king of the new Jerusalem, which will come from heaven. And he's saying to us, lift your eyes from the things that are under the sun and lift your eyes beyond that. The psalmist will say, I lift my eyes unto the hills. From whence comes my salvation? My salvation comes from the Lord. But even that is under the sun. But Paul says to us that we are seated with him in the heavenly places, not under the sun. Far above all power, far above all principality. At the right hand of the majesty. He is the one we celebrate. And these are some of the reasons why we celebrate him. That he has come. The word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have beheld his glory. The glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. May you find him this season of Christmas. Amen.
Or shall we do it better? For Jesus, such a powerful sermon. We wish